Viewers may remember Laura Murray, who was employed in the Labour Party's Independent Complaints Unit by Jeremy Corbyn. Does that name ring a bell at all?
The whole situation rings a bell.
Indeed. So Laura Murray was employed by the party ostensibly to tackle its anti-Semitism scandal, which was at its height when she was hired. She got the job, incidentally, 2 days after defaming Rachel Riley, who was Jewish, on Twitter. So whether that was a rite of passage or not, I'll leave you to decide.
Well, it's like a an elitist thing where we've all got to have dirt on each other.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like you have to do this, otherwise you can't work in Labour HQ.
Maybe it's just that you need to be sufficiently anti-Semitic to handle anti-Semitism for Labour. Who knows? Anyway, I'll leave you to decide that. Laura's been in the news recently over this defamatory tweet because the ruling has come out, as we see here. Countdown star Rachel Riley has been awarded £10,000 in damages after she sued Jeremy Corbyn's former aide following an exchange on Twitter. The television presenter complained about a tweet that Laura Murray posted more than 2 years ago. The High Court heard in May that Miss Riley claimed Miss Murray's post caused serious harm to her reputation. Mr. Justice Nicklin delivered his judgment on Monday and found that Miss Riley was entitled to vindication, but did say there had been a clear element of provocation in the tweet she posted. Yes, this is Twitter. There is a clear element of provocation in everything. If we go to Rachel Riley's response, I'm extremely pleased to have won my libel case versus Laura Murray, former head of complaints for the Labour Party. This has been a very draining process, and I'm relieved to finally have vindication. Huge thanks to my lawyer, who's been a superhero, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Always thank your lawyers, by the way, after winning a legal case. I think that's good advice, don't you?
I also, I don't know if you have this, but she was very much opposed to Jeremy Corbyn, Rachel Riley herself,
yes.
And largely on the grounds of she thinks he's an anti-Semite or permissive anti-Semitism. And so I imagine this is a particular cherry on the cake for her, where it's like, I got to go after my political enemies as well as win a libel case.
No, absolutely. So the subject of the spat itself, I think, is pretty irrelevant. It's just the usual Twitter muckslinging about anti-Semitism and Islamophobia that surrounds Jeremy Corbyn's political career. But I do have the content of Laura's defamatory tweet here. She said, today Jeremy Corbyn went to his local mosque for Visit My Mosque Day and was attacked by a Brexiteer. No, I've never heard of Visit My Mosque Day, to be fair. And he was attacked, as in an egg was thrown at him. I believe that was the substance of the assault.
Pretty typical politician stuff, to be honest.
Yeah, but Corbyn did sue, and he did win damages. Rachel Riley tweets that Corbyn deserves to be violently attacked because he is a Nazi. The woman is as dangerous as she is stupid. Nobody should engage with her ever. So since this is a misrepresentation of Riley's tweet, a libel case was clearly on the cards. So what was the leftist reaction to this court ruling? Go to the next tweet. Love and solidarity to Laura Murray, who is once again the victim of the establishment's deranged reaction to a peace activist leading the Labour Party. Okay, that's interesting. The establishment's out to get Laura Murray. We go to the next one. Laura Murray is a careful and thoughtful socialist, utterly serious about our noblest principles, including when they're tough or inconvenient. To see our media and courts paint her as something quite different is an instructive lesson. I hope we can donate to her aid now. Okay, so she needs aid. Interesting. The establishment's out to get her. We go to the next one. Owen Jones, a familiar face on this channel. I've known Laura Murray for years. She's one of the nicest people I've ever met. Just a genuinely lovely, caring woman who I'm proud to know. Yeah, excellent judge of character there, Owen Jones. It's not affected by your political leanings at all. And finally, we have a clip here. Arch-Zionist Rachel Riley wins case against Palestinian descendant Laura Murray.
Oh, God. We went through the anti-Semitism complaints when it all got leaked, and I'm getting flashbacks to that. It's just endlessly, there were just Labour Party members shouting at each other, yeah, well, the Zios are in charge of everything, all right?
Oh, God.
Okay.
But I find this one particularly interesting because is Laura Palestinian? Well, since you asked, let's play Who Do You Think You Are? On today's episode, we'll take a tour through Scotland, London Mayfair, Westminster and the USSR, but probably not Palestine. Shall we take a look at her parents? Oh, and I just love this as she's put on her bio. Please no bourgeoisie on my profile, thanks. Laura Murray, a key aide to Corbyn, comes from a clan who made a fortune from the £50 million sale of the family Picasso.
Bourgeoisie.
But do donate to her fundraiser, please. So if we go through this article, today it can be revealed that Laura's family was behind the anonymous sale of one of the most expensive artworks in history, Pablo Picasso's L'Enfant en Pigeon, Child with a Dove, which was sold for 50 million in 2013. She also owns a share of a 1.3 million North London property transferred to her by her mother, reportedly saving up to £500,000 in inheritance tax. Murray is the daughter of Andrew Murray, 60, a key Corbyn advisor who comes from Scottish aristocracy and whose grandfather served as the imperial governor of Madras. He left the Communist Party after 40 years in 2016 to join Corbyn's campaign in the Labour Party. Yet it is Laura Murray's maternal lineage that accounts for much of her fortune. She is the great-granddaughter of the second Baron Aberconwy, an Eton-educated Edwardian industrialist and aristocrat, and Lady Aberconwy, his wife, who was bequeathed Picasso's masterpiece by the art collector rumoured in the family to have been her lover, Samuel Courtauld, who founded the Courtauld Gallery, I believe. The oil on canvas painting...
Is there more of this? Sorry.
Oh, yeah,
How
it goes on.
How established do you have to be?
It goes on. The oil on canvas painting of a child holding a bird has a special place in art history. Produced by Picasso at the age of 20 in 1901, it marked the start of his famous blue period of melancholic paintings featuring prostitutes, beggars and social rejects, and probably leftists too, in green-blue shades. They rank among his most celebrated works. So, who is Laura Murray's mother? The woman who gave her a 1.3 million mansion to live in.
Sorry, that's just the dad's side.
Yeah.
That's just the dad's side.
That's just the dad's side.
Established as established you can get. I mean, I don't think you could be more established if you were, I don't know, unless you're a member of the royal family.
Pretty much, yeah. Like, it's incredible. I've got the full family tree coming up because if we look at her mother...
I think he was a member of the Communist Party as well, whilst he's that,
yeah.
well endowed.
Uh-huh.
Sorry.
I know.
It's astounding.
It's ridiculous. We go to the next slide. Her mum is Susan Fiona Dorinthia Michie. It's Susan Michie.
People might not remember. Yeah. I remember.
Yeah.
Who is she?
We've got a full profile, so let's get into it. Susan Michie herself is a lifelong member of the Communist Party. You can see by the helpful hammer and sickle here. Yet she also sits on the government advisory councils of SAGE and SPY-B as a top behavioural scientist and has been described as an influential member and a real star. So why did the Conservative government hire a dyed-in-the-wool communist whose entire family is knee-deep in Stalinism, Corbynism or both as an advisor on the pandemic? We all remember, I think, the outcome of this calamitous hiring decision, but Peter Hitchens has a really good summary in his profile of Susan Michie. We go to the next slide. A now notorious document was issued in March 2020 by SAGE called Options for Increasing Adherence to Social Distancing Measures. This is March of last year. It concluded that we were not yet frightened enough. It said, a substantial number of people still do not feel sufficiently personally threatened by COVID, so we needed to be scared a bit more. It recommended the perceived level of personal threat needs to be increased among those who are complacent, using hard-hitting emotional messaging. Well, most of us can recall such messaging. Wherever can it have come from? So Hitchens goes on to outline that the chief suspect is, of course, our favourite communist, Susan Michie. In her book, State of Fear, Laura Dodsworth calls these people psychocrats, unelected behavioural scientists and psychologists who have used a position of extreme influence during the pandemic to spread mass fear throughout the British population, with the ostensible aim of getting us to support lockdown measures and increase our perceived level of personal threat. So let's just have another look at the family tree. Do you see any Palestinians there? Is that one? Eulalia Ilfdefonsa Heaven? No, it's not. What about Christabel McNaughton? No, not there either. No Palestinians.
Gilmore? No, I'm not seeing any Arab names.
No. A lot of aristocrats. There are 2 MPs there, as you can see.
The Honourable Barbara Mary Hope.
Yep. She's the Honourable, I believe, because she's the daughter of aristocracy. I think she gets to claim the title, something like that.
Oh, God.
Yeah, no, they're...
You cannot get any more privilege in your life. And then, again, teaming with communists.
Yes.
I mean, it's sort of embarrassing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But I suppose not unexpected.
But
I'm thinking back to that 10 grand.
Yeah.
She owes Rachel Riley 10 grand.
10 grand. Yeah, big
That's
deal,
nothing.
right?
That's nothing to her, is it? Mm-hmm. I mean, when you got that much property
She lives in a
value,
1.3 million mansion. I think she can find 10 grand out of her back pocket somewhere.
and yet you've got these people, these brainlets on Twitter just being like, oh, I hope we donate to her Patreon or whatever it is.
But there are a few other people on this list who are worth talking about. Andrew Murray, which is Laura's father, used to write for literal Soviet propaganda. He worked for Novosti press agency from 1985 to 1986, and we have an article giving a bit of a profile here. So Francis Beckett, who has written a book about the Communist Party and worked for several trade unions, described Murray to me as extremely rigid and sectarian. He had added, Murray and the straight left people were more extreme than most of the Stalinists I knew. The Stalinists were known as Tankies, but Murray's lot were super Tankies. This is the sort of person we have advising the government.
Send in the tanks. They were like, yeah, the Hungarians deserved it.
Yes, absolutely.
Quite frankly, I don't know why we weren't sending in tanks all day. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And for many months, no one in mainstream news said a peep about Michie's political leanings, even as she was appearing all across our screens telling us to stay at home. I'll remind you, she's a psychologist and has no doctoral qualifications. She's not a medical doctor, is what I'm trying to say. The first to break the spell was Richard Madeley of Richard and Judy. In that interview, Michie was asked if her political views influenced her advice. A fairly anodyne question, you might think, but not according to The Independent, who branded this line of questioning, if we go to the next article, McCarthyite. Madeley then questioned Michie about her political...
Hang on. That's not an insult. Like, this, sorry, no, like, the joke is, when you use that as an insult, it's, I'm not a commie, so you coming after me is ridiculous and McCarthyite, right? Because MacArthur went after people who weren't commies as well as commies.
Yep.
But you are.
Yep.
Like, you're a lifelong member. Your dad's a lifelong member. Your mum's a lifelong member. Your grandma on your mum's side's a lifelong member, including her husband.
Far, but...
Well, we went back, didn't we? They went up to
yes, they weren't. They weren't.
Oh no, not her grandma. No. But your daughter's a lifelong member of well, the Labour Party, so same thing.
Yeah, we've got 3 generations of super Tankies and Stalinists.
You can't say it's MacArthurite to go after communists. That just makes
it
sound correct.
It's not McCarthyite to ask, "Are you a communist?" Yes.
No, it's proper.
Right. So Madeley then questioned Michie about her political views, mentioning her membership of the Communist Party and saying, if your politics informs your sense of control, it's not just a medical argument, but you have a political bent to want the state to tell people what to do. And Michie's deeply unimpressed response to this question was, I'm here to talk about science, not politics. Are we buying it, Callum?
No.
We shouldn't be buying it. The Michie clan's views on science and politics are very revealing. Take a look at the obituary for Susan's parents, Donald and Anne, in The Guardian, written by her ex-husband, by Andrew. Donald was for years the Daily Worker's science correspondent, drawing on his broad-based understanding of the sciences, as well as the Marxism that was always his intellectual template. The politics of solidarity were central to Anne, from helping post-war Yugoslavia build a railway to actively supporting trade union struggles nearer home. They integrated scientific inquiry with the struggle for social justice. One without the other would have made no sense to them. As they sought to enlarge scientific knowledge, so they also worked to change society to allow that science to flower for the universal good. So just to reiterate, according to the Michies, science without social justice makes no sense.
And she's in charge of whether or not the country gets locked down. She has no basis in science, particularly in viruses, but instead in controlling people.
Yep. So just to round this off, this is the person advising the government on lockdowns. Now, let's complete the picture by talking about Michie's current husband, because Andrew Murray is her ex-husband.
Oh, does it get worse?
Yes. So her current husband is also a psychologist, Robert West. West regularly retweets George Monbiot and Owen Jones, and recently came out with this tweet regarding anti-lockdown protesters. Quote, "These are very damaged people. Unfortunately, damaged people spread damage like a virus, and like a virus, we need an evidence-based and thought-through strategy for dealing with the threat they pose."
So what is this on the UN scale of genocide? I think this is step 3, like dehumanizing.
It sounds like it, doesn't it?
Okay.
So he wants to basically treat lockdown skeptics like a virus.
I want to just call them rats, if that's what you want to do. If you really want to be on stage 3 of what you're thinking about, then why not?
Yeah, it's quite remarkable. And these are the people responsible for spreading mass fear throughout the whole country. Stalinists and super Tankies.
I mean, again, these people are the threat to the country. You are the guys locking down the country, not on the basis of what is scientifically the correct thing to do, but instead, what is the communist thing to do here, comrade? I need to be a super Tanky.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that...
Sorry, I don't even know what to say.
The idea that mass fear was the correct solution as well. Like, when people are scared, when people are stressed, their immune system is compromised, and it makes them more susceptible to respiratory illnesses, not less. And so the idea that you can just terrify anyone into following whatever restrictions you come up with, and the world will be a better place for it, this is definitely Stalinist thinking right here. And don't you think there's something in it which is it's very much like once you decide what the greater good is, then you are justified in doing anything to achieve it. And they've justified themselves in setting themselves up as dictators in the sense that they are telling everyone what to do, being very intrusive and disruptive to their lives. They're using manipulation to get people to obey. I think this is an absolute moral evil, and yet there's been no ethical input on the whole decision-making process as far as we can tell.
And I'm just thinking in my head, like, look at that tweet. If we can get that tweet back up to show people, and just like change the name to some Chinese name and change the image to a member of the Communist Party of China, official, put a verified check mark on it, and then how do we view this? And remind us that they're all super Tankies, and would happily send in tanks on these people.
Oh, absolutely. No, they would definitely send in the tanks.
We would all start becoming liberals again, wouldn't we? Everyone who's been supporting this stuff would start to remember, oh no, there was something valuable about freedom. But because this guy's in the West, we just let slide. Yeah. Even though he's in central government.
I've even found a lot of leftist literature writing about how they hate Susan Michie and their lot for lots of reasons. One, because they're aristocrats and they're fabulously wealthy. And they are Prosecco proletarians.
But don't worry, they'd run the proletariat over in a tank in a second.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. And another one is they claim that they are not real communists, of course, because that's the classic leftist insult, isn't it? They're not real communists because they are Stalinist and authoritarian. And they're trying to lock the whole country down while they sit in their mansions at home being quite comfortable, I think. It's remarkable, isn't it? Anyway, that's the Michies for you.
I always knew it was bad. I remember when Cole told me one of them was a commie, like for a lifelong Communist Party member. That was bad enough. But like that level of just corruption, frankly, in a family around her, and then the things they've done and said. The idea that Boris, the Conservative Prime Minister, keeps any of that around, just purging it instantly.
Absolutely. Why on earth, as a Conservative politician, would you have your advisors full of communists?
Also just, again, I mean, even without any of that, even if she wasn't a Communist Party member and instead was just, you know, her daughter works at Labour Party HQ for your opposition.
And her ex-husband.
Yeah. And yet you have her in your central government working with you.
Yeah, and her brother, by the way, is a big friend of Seamus Milne, who was another of Corbyn's top advisors. So, like, she's literally in the Labour family clan at this point. And you're going to hire her to talk about the pandemic, really.
If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast, The Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content we have on the site, such as this article, which is written by Hugo, called The War on Drugs, brought to you by the Tories on Cocaine. There is also an audio track for Silver and Gold tier members if you'd like to listen instead of reading, because I know how difficult reading can be sometimes. Anyway, if you'd like to get all the updates on what's coming out, you can always follow us on Getter at lotuseaters_com for the @. Thank you and goodbye.